Fans didn't just react with surprise, they froze. When confirmation of Sam Heughan's so-called dream wedding quietly surfaced, the response online was disbelief bordering on panic. This wasn't a tabloid rumor or an anonymous tip drifting through social media. The source carried enough weight to make even longtime skeptics stop scrolling and read twice. For years, Sam Heughan had done everything possible to keep marriage off the public agenda. He answered questions with humor, deflected speculation with charm, and consistently drew a firm line around his private life. That consistency created an unspoken rule among fans and media alike: if Sam wasn't talking about it, it wasn't happening. This confirmation shattered that assumption instantly. What made the situation even more jarring was how unceremonious the reveal felt. There was no staged announcement, no glossy photos, no dramatic interview designed to ease fans into the idea. Instead, the confirmation appeared almost accidentally, as if it had slipped past layers of protection that had held for years. That quietness made it feel more real, and far more unsettling. Almost immediately, attention shifted from the wedding itself to the phrasing surrounding it. Insiders noted that this was not described as a sudden engagement or a whirlwind romance, but as something Sam Heughan had envisioned for a long time. The phrase, dream wedding, carried emotional weight, suggesting intention rather than impulse. It hinted at a plan that existed well before the public knew anything was unfolding. That detail forced fans to look backward instead of forward. Past interviews were replayed, casual comments re-examined, and moments once dismissed as harmless suddenly felt loaded with meaning. The realization was uncomfortable. While audiences believed nothing serious was happening, something deeply personal may have been quietly progressing. The gap between perception and reality became impossible to ignore. What stands out most is how carefully Sam Heughan appears to have managed this silence. Friends have long described him as fiercely protective of his inner circle, someone who separates professional openness from personal vulnerability. If a wedding truly reached the point of confirmation without public awareness, it suggests years of deliberate restraint. That level of control does not happen by accident. As speculation intensified, fans initially focused on familiar names. Theories resurfaced involving people long associated with Sam through past projects or public appearances. But as details emerged, it became clear that none of the usual assumptions aligned with the confirmation. The identity connected to this wedding did not fit the narrative fans had built over time. That realization triggered the strongest reaction yet. The shock was no longer about Sam Heughan getting married, but about who he had chosen to share that future with. Online discussions split instantly, with some celebrating the privacy he maintained and others struggling to reconcile the news with years of expectation. Emotional investment met reality head-on. Adding to the tension was Sam's continued silence. He did not rush to clarify, deny, or soften the impact of the confirmation. For someone known to address rumors quickly when they threaten his work, this restraint felt intentional. It suggested that whatever was unfolding did not require approval, explanation, or validation. Industry observers noticed this as well. A controlled rollout would have reduced backlash, yet Sam allowed the story to spread organically, almost unprotected. That choice implied confidence, not carelessness. It also hinted that the decision itself mattered more than the reaction it provoked. The idea of a dream wedding began to take on new meaning in this context. It no longer sounded like a fantasy designed to please fans, but a personal milestone defined on Sam's own terms. Dreams, after all, are deeply individual, and they rarely align perfectly with public desire. This disconnect may explain the intensity of the response. As the hours passed, one truth became increasingly clear. The confirmation wasn't meant to shock, but it did because it exposed how little the public truly knew. Sam Heughan had succeeded in keeping a central part of his life separate from his fame, even as millions believed they were watching closely. That illusion of access dissolved overnight. Now, attention has shifted toward the unanswered question that lingers beneath every reaction. If the wedding itself is real and confirmed, and if the identity involved defies expectation, What else has been quietly misunderstood? The story has moved beyond romance into something more unsettling. It has become a reminder that even the most visible lives can still hold secrets no one sees coming. The reveal itself did not arrive with fireworks, but with a quiet certainty that made it impossible to dismiss. The identity connected to Sam Heughan's confirmed wedding was not another actress, not a familiar public figure, and not someone fans had been tracking for years. According to sources close to the situation, the person at the center of this decision has deliberately remained outside the spotlight, shielded from speculation by design. That single detail overturned nearly every theory circulating online. What stunned fans most was how ordinary the connection appeared once it was understood. This was not a relationship built under cameras or red carpets, but one that grew in the margins of a very public life. Insiders describe it as grounded, consistent, and intentionally separate from the industry world Sam Heughan inhabits. The shock came from realizing that while audiences searched for clues in plain sight, the truth was unfolding somewhere entirely different. The reaction was immediate and deeply divided. Some fans expressed relief, seeing the choice as proof that Sam had protected something real from the distortions of fame. Others struggled with disappointment, not because of the person involved, but because the fantasy they had held onto for years no longer fit reality. Emotional investment does not dissolve easily, especially when it has been nurtured over time. What complicates matters further is how little Sam Heughan appears interested in reshaping the narrative. There was no attempt to introduce the identity gradually, no soft framing to manage expectations. The information surfaced, settled into the public space, and was left there. That restraint suggested a boundary being drawn, not negotiated. Observers within the industry point out that this approach aligns with how Sam has handled major personal decisions before. He has never relied on public approval to validate private choices, even when that silence invites misunderstanding. In this case, the confirmation of a wedding without the spectacle felt like a continuation of that philosophy. The message was subtle but firm. As discussions evolved, a new perspective began to emerge among fans. The idea of a dream wedding was reinterpreted, not as a fairy tale designed for public consumption, but as a moment of stability chosen away from expectation. Dreams, in this sense, were not about surprise guests or lavish settings, but about normalcy. That reframing softened some of the initial shock. Still, the emotional fallout cannot be ignored. Years of speculation created narratives that felt personal to the audience, even though they were never promised. Letting go of those narratives requires adjustment, and not everyone is ready to do that quietly. The intensity of reaction reflects not betrayal, but the sudden loss of a story people believed they understood. For Sam Heughan, the situation represents a rare moment where privacy and transparency collide. By allowing confirmation without elaboration, he acknowledged the truth without surrendering control. It was a measured compromise, revealing just enough to prevent distortion while refusing to turn his life into content. That balance is difficult to achieve, and even harder to maintain. As the story continues to settle, attention has shifted from shock to reflection. Fans are beginning to ask not who the person is, but why the revelation felt so destabilizing. The answer may lie in the assumptions made along the way, rather than the choice itself. Familiarity can create confidence, even when it is misplaced. What remains now is acceptance, not explanation. The wedding is confirmed, the identity no longer mysterious, and the boundary firmly in place. Sam Heughan has chosen a future that exists outside public expectation, and in doing so, reminded everyone watching that access is never guaranteed. Some stories are shared only when they are ready, not when they are demanded.